Hello, good afternoon, and welcome. And if all goes well, this will be our final reading of The Women Who Run with the Wolves, Myths and Stories of the Wild Woman Archetype by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, Ph.D. A deeply spiritual book. She honors what is tough, smart, and untamed in women. She venerates the female soul, the Washington Post book world. So, let's do it. We're getting into chapter 15, which is titled Shadowing, Canto Hondo, the Deep Song. I pray for amazing connectivity. Shadowing means to have such a light touch, such a light tread, that one can move freely through the forest, observing without being observed. A wolf shadows anyone or anything that passes through her territory. It is her way of gathering information. It is the equivalent of manifesting and then becoming like smoke, and then manifesting again. Wolves can move ever so softly. The sound they make is in the manner of Los Angeles timidos, the shyest angels. First they fall back and shadow the creature they're curious about. Then, all of a sudden, they appear ahead of the creature, peeking half-face with one golden eye from behind a tree. Abruptly, the wolf turns and vanishes in a blur of white ruff and plumed tail, only to backtrack and pop up behind the stranger again. That is shadowing. The wild woman has been shadowing human women for years. Now we see a glimpse of her. Now she is invisible again. Yet she makes so many appearances in our lives and in so many different forms. We feel surrounded by her images and urges. She comes to us in dreams or in stories, especially stories from our own personal lives, for she wants us to see who we are and if we are ready to join her yet. But if we look at the shadows we cast, we see that they are not two-legged human shadows, but the lovely shapes of a something free and wild. Hey, Cool Gamer. Hey, Code. Welcome in. Last reading, y'alls, for this magnificent book. Melancholy Feels. We are meant to be permanent residents, not just tourists in her territory, for we are derived from that land. It is our motherland and our inheritance at the same time. The wild force of our soul psyches is shadowing us for a reason. There is a saying from medieval times that if you are in a descent and pursued by a great power, and if this great power is able to snag your shadow, then you too shall become a power in your own right. The great and good wild force of our own psyches means to place its paw on our shadows, and in that manner she claims us as her own. Once the wild woman snags our shadows, we belong to ourselves again, and we are in our own right environment, and in our rightful home. Most women are not afraid of this. In fact, they crave the reunion. If they could this very moment find the lair of the wild woman, they would dive right in and jump happily into her lap. They only need to be set in the right direction, which is always down into one's own work, down into one's own inner life, down through that tunnel to the lair. We began our search for the wild, whether as girl children or as adult women, because in the midst of some ardent endeavor, we felt that a wild and supportive presence was near. Perhaps we found her tracks across fresh snow in a dream. Or psychically, we noticed a bent twig here and there, pebbles overturned so their wet sides faced upward, and we knew that something blessed had passed our way. We sensed within our own psyches the sound of a familiar breath from afar. We felt tremors in the ground, and we innately knew that something powerful, someone important, some wild freedom within us was on the move. We could not turn from it, but rather followed, learning more and more how to leap, how to run, how to shadow all things that came across our psychic ground. We began to shadow the wild woman, and she lovingly shadowed us in return. She howled, and we tried to answer her, even before we remembered how to speak her language, and even before we exactly knew to whom we were speaking. And she waited for us and encouraged us. This is the miracle of the wild and instinctual nature. Without full knowing, we knew. Without full sight, we understood that a miraculous and loving force existed beyond the boundaries of ego alone. Boom. As a child, Opal Whiteley wrote these words about reconciliation with the power of the wild. Today, near eventime, I did lead the girl who has no seeing a little way into the forest, where it was darkness and shadows were. I led her toward a shadow that was coming our way. I did touch her cheeks with its velvety fingers, and now she too does have lurkings, or now she too does have likings for shadows, and her fear that was is gone. The things that have been lost to women for centuries can be found again by following the shadows they cast. And make a candle to Guadalupe, for these lost and stolen treasures still cast shadows across our night dreams, and in our imaginal daydreams, and in old stories, in poetry, and in any inspired moment. Women across the world, your mother, my mother, you and I, your sister, your friends, our daughters, all the tribes of women not yet met, we all dream what is lost, what next must rise from the unconscious. We all dream the same dreams worldwide. We are never without the map. We are never without each other. We unite through our dreams. Dreams are compensatory. They provide a mirror into the deep unconscious, most often reflecting what is lost and what is yet needed for correction and balance. Through dreams, the unconscious constantly produces teaching images. So, like a fabled lost continent, the wild dreamland rises out of our sleeping bodies, rises steaming and streaming to create a sheltering motherland over all of us. This is the continent of our knowing. It is the land of our self. And this is what we dream. We dream the archetype of wild woman. We dream of reunion. And we are born and reborn from this dream every day and create from its energy, all during the daytime. We are born and reborn night after night from the same wild dream, and we return to daylight, grasping a coarse hair, the soles of our feet black with damp earth, our hair smelling like ocean, or forest, or cook fire. My sister's doing her nails. She's sending me pictures. They look so cool. It is from that land that we step into our day clothes, our day lives. We travel from that wildish place in order to sit before the computer, in front of the cookpot, before the window, in front of the teacher, the book, the customer. We breathe the wild into our corporate work, our business creations, our decisions, our art, the work of our hands and hearts, our politics, spirituality, plans, home life, education, industry, foreign affairs, freedoms, rights, and duties. The wild feminine is not only sustainable in all worlds, it sustains all worlds. Let us admit it. We women are building a motherland, each with her own plot of soil, eked from a night of dreams, a day of work. We are spreading this soil in larger and larger circles, slowly, slowly. One day, it will be a continuous land, a resurrected land come back from the dead. Munda de la Madre, psychic motherworld, coexisting and co-equal with all other worlds. This world is being made from our lives, our cries, our laughter, our bones. It is a world worth making, a world worth living in, a world in which there is a prevailing and decent wild sanity. When we think of reclamation, it may bring to mind bulldozers or carpenters, the restoration of an old structure, and that is the modern usage of the word. However, the older meaning is this. The word reclamation is derived from the Old French reclaimer, meaning, quote, to call back the hawk which has been let fly, end quote. Yes, to cause something of the wild to return when it is called. It is therefore, by its meaning, an excellent word for us. We are using the voices of our minds, our lives, and our souls to call back intuition, imagination, to call back the wild woman, and she comes. Women cannot get away from this. If there is to be change, we are it. We carry la que sabe, the one who knows. If there is to be inner change, individual women must do it. If there is to be world change, we women have our own way of helping to achieve it. Wild Woman whispers the words and the ways to us, and we follow. She has been running and stopping and waiting to see if we are catching up. She has something, many things to show us. So, if you are on the verge of breaking away, taking a risk, daring to act in prescribed ways, then dig up the deepest bones possible, fructifying the wild and natural aspects of women, of life, of men, of children, of earth. Use your love and good instincts to know when to growl, to pounce, to take a swipe, when to kill, when to retreat, when to bay till dawn. To live as closely as possibly to the numinous wild, a woman must do more head tossing, more brimming, have more sniffing intuition, more creative life, more get down dirty, more solitude, more women's company, more natural life, more fire, more spirit, more cooking of words and ideas. She must do more recognition of sorority, more seeding, more rootstock keeping, more kindness to men, more neighborhood revolution, more poetry, more painting of fables and facts, longer reaches into the wild feminine, more terrorist sewing circles, and more howling, and especially much more Canto Hondo, much more deep song. She must shake out her pelt, strut the old pathways, assert her instinctual knowledge. We can all assert membership in the ancient Scar clan, proudly bear the battle scars of our time, write our secrets on walls, refuse to be ashamed, lead the way through and out. Let us not overspend on anger. Instead, let us be empowered by it. Most of all, let us be cunning and use our feminine wits. Let us keep in mind that the best cannot and must not hide. Meditation, education, all the dream analysis, all the knowledge of God's green acre is of no value if one keeps it all to oneself or one's chosen few. So come out wherever you are. Leave deep footprints because you can. Be the old woman in the rocking chair who rocks the idea until it becomes young again. Be the courageous and patient woman in the crescent moon bear who learns to see through illusion. Don't be distracted by burning matches and fantasies like the little match girl. Hold out till you find the ones you belong to, like the ugly duckling. Clear the creative river so La Llorona can find what belongs to her. Like the handless maiden, let the enduring heart lead you through the forest. Like La Loba, collect the bones of lost valuables and sing them back to life. Forgive as much as you can, forget a little, and create a lot. What you do today influences your matrilineal lines in the future. The daughters of your daughters are likely to remember you, and most importantly, follow in your tracks. Boom! Desert Rose, oh my gosh, hello, angelfish. That feels so huge inside of me, y'all. I'm proud of myself for making through that without the crying. Woo! Jeez. It's powerful. The ways and means of living with the instinctual nature are many, and the answers to your deepest questions change as you change, and as the world changes. Change as you change, and as the world changes. So it cannot be said, quote, do this and this, in this particular order, and all will be well, end quote. But over my lifetime, as I've met wolves, I have tried to puzzle out how they live, for the most part, in such harmony. So for peaceable purposes, I would suggest you begin right now with any point on this list. For those who are struggling, it may help greatly to begin with number 10. And number 10 is howl often. General wolf rules for life. 1. Eat. 2. Rest. 3. Rove in between. 4. Render loyalty. 5. Love the children. 6. Cavil in moonlight. 7. Tune your ears. 8. Attend to the bones. 9. Make love. 10. Howl often. Yeah. That's chapter 15. Chapter 16. The Wolf's Eyelash. Oh my gosh. And this is in italics, this little bit right here. If you don't go out in the woods, nothing will ever happen, and your life will never begin. Don't go out into the woods. Don't go out, they said. Why not? Why should I not go out into the woods tonight? She asked. A big wolf lives there who eats humans such as you. Don't go out in the woods. Don't go out. We mean it. Naturally, she went out. She went out in the woods anyway. And of course, she met the wolf, just as they had warned her. See, we told you, they crowed. This is my life, not a fairy tale, you dolts, she said. I have to go to the woods. And I have to meet the wolf, or else my life will never begin. But the wolf she encountered was in a trap. In a trap this wolf's leg was in. Help me, oh, help me, aye, 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 cried the wolf. Help me, oh, help me, he cried, and I shall reward you justly. For this is the way of the wolves in tales of this kind. How do I know you won't kill me? She asked. It was her job to ask questions. How do I know you will not kill me and leave me lying in my bones? Wrong question, said the wolf. You'll just have to take my word for it. And the wolf began to cry and wail once again and more. Oh, aye, aye, aye. There's only one question worth asking, fair maiden. Oh, there wasn't laughter sound, but I couldn't help it. Oh, you wolf, I will take a chance. All right, here. And she sprang the trap, and the wolf drew out its paw, and this she bound with herbs and grasses. Ah, I thank you, kind maiden, thank you, sighed the wolf, and because she had read too many of the wrong kind of tales, she cried, Go ahead and kill me now, and let us get over with this. But no, this did not come to pass. Instead, this wolf put his paw upon her arm. I'm a wolf from another time and place, he said, and plucking a lash from his eye, gave it to her and said, Use this, and be wise. From now on, you will know who is good and not so good. Just look through my eyes, and you will see clearly. For letting me live, I bid you live, in a manner as never before. Remember, there's only one question worth asking, fair maiden. Woo, raya, woo! Or something like that. And so she went back to her village, happy to still have her life. And this time, as they said, just stay here and be my bride, or do as I tell you, or say as I want you to say, and remain as unwritten upon as the day you came. She held up the wolf's eyelash and peered through it and saw their motives, as she had not seen them before. And the next time the butcher weighed the meat, she looked through her wolf's eyelash and saw that he weighed his thumb too. And she looked at her suitor, who said, I am so good for you. And she saw that her suitor was so good for exactly nothing. And in this way, and more, she was saved from not all, but from many misfortunes. But more so, in this new seeing, not only did she see the sly and cruel, she began to grow immense in heart, for she looked at each person and weighed them anew through this gift from the wolf she had rescued. And she saw those who were truly kind and went near to them. She found her mate and stayed all her days of her life. She discerned the brave and came close to them. She apprehended the faithful and joined with them. She saw bewilderment under anger and hastened to soothe it. She saw love in the eyes of the sky and reached out to them, of the shy, and reached out to them. She saw suffering in the stiff-lipped and courted their laughter. She saw need in the man with no words and spoke for him. She saw faith deep in the woman who said she had none and rekindled hers from her own. She saw all things with her lash of wolf, all things true and all things false, all things turning against life and all things turning toward life, all things seen only through the eyes of that which weighs the heart with heart and not with mind alone. This is how she learned that it is true what they say, that the wolf is the wisest of all. If you listen closely, the wolf in its howling is always asking the most important question, not where is the next food, not where is the next fight, not where is the next dance, but the most important question in order to see into and behind, to weigh the value of all that lives is woo. Oh, it's like she's just like, I'm just gonna howl. Ow! You can howl with me if you want to. I'm gonna do it again. Ow! Where is the soul? Where is the soul? Go out in the woods. Go out. If you don't go out in the woods, nothing will ever happen, and your life will never begin. Go out in the woods. Go out. Go out in the woods. Go out. Go out in the woods. Go out. And this is excerpted from The Wolf's Eyelash, original prose poem by C.P. Estes, copyright. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, copyright 1970, from Rowing Songs for the Night Sea Journey, Contemporary Chants. Wee. So that's technically the end of the book. We're going to read the afterword and the addendum. Wow, it's only 22 minutes. Here I will lay out for you the ethos of story in my family's ethnic traditions, those that my story making and poetry are rooted in, and a bit about my use of las palabras, words, and los cuentos, stories, for assisting the life of the soul. To my eyes, historias que son medicina, stories are medicine. Quote, whenever a fairy tale is told, it becomes night, no matter where the dwelling, no matter the time, no matter the season. The telling of tales causes a starry sky and a white moon to creep from the eaves and hover over the heads of the listeners. Sometimes, by the end of the tale, the chamber is filled with daybreak. Other times, a star shard is left behind. Sometimes, a ragged thread of storm sky. And whatever is left behind is the bounty to work with, to use toward the soul making, end quote. My work in the humus of stories, I think I said hummus once when I was reading this. Maybe it is hummus, but I think it might be humus. My work in the humus of stories does not come from my training as a psychoanalyst alone, but equally from my long life as the child of a deeply ethnic and non-literate family heritage. Although my people could not read or write, or did so haltingly, they were wise in ways that are often lost to modern culture. There were times in my growing up years that stories and jokes and songs and dances were demonstrated at the table during a meal or at the wedding or wake. But most of what I tell raw, or write into their literary stories, was received not while sitting in a formal circle, but during hard work, tasks requiring intensity and concentration. To my mind, story, in every way possible, thrives only on hard work, intellectual, spiritual, familial, physical, and integral. It never comes easy. It is never, quote, just picked up or studied in one's off times. Its essence cannot be born nor maintained in air-conditioned comfort. It cannot grow to any depth in an enthusiastic but non-committed mind. Neither can it live in gregarious but shallow environs. Story cannot be studied. It is learned through assimilation, through living in its proximity with those who know it, live it, and teach it. more so through all the day-to-day mundane tasks of life, much more than the clearly ceremonial times. The healing medicine of story does not exist in a vacuum. It cannot exist divorced from its spiritual source. It cannot be taken on as a mix and match project. There is an integrity to story that comes from a real life lived in it. The story is clearly illuminated from being raised up in it. My family's oldest traditions, which stretch far back, as my abuelitas say, quote, for as many generations as there are generations, end quote. The times for story, the tales chosen, the exact words employed to convey them, the tones of voice used for each, the endings and beginnings, the unfolding of the text, and especially the intention behind each are most often dictated by an acute inner sensibility, more so than any outer pull or opportunity. Some traditions set aside specific times for telling stories. Among my friends from several Pueblo tribes, stories of coyote are reserved for winter telling. My comrades and relatives are, or my comrade, oh, my comadres and relatives in the south of Mexico tell about the great wind from the east in the springtime only. In my foster family, certain tales, cooked in their Eastern European heritage, are told only in autumn, after harvest. In my blood family, my El Dia de los Muertos stories are traditionally begun in early winter and carried on through the dark of winter until the return of spring. In the old and integral healing rites germane to curandero, cuarandisma, cuanderisma, and mesmandoc, mesma, mesamondoc. Every detail is weighed very carefully against the tradition. When to tell a story, which story, and to whom, how long and in what form, what words, and under which conditions. We carefully consider the time, the place, the health or lack of health of a person, the mandates in the person's inner and outer lives, and several other critical factors as well, in order to arrive at the medicine needed. In the most basic ways, there is a spirit, both holy and whole, behind our ages-old rituals, and we tell stories when we are summoned by their covenant with us, not vice versa. In using story as medicine, as in a vigorous psychoanalytic training, as well as in other vigorously taught and supervised healing arts, we are trained carefully to know what to do and when. But most especially, we are trained in what not to do. This, perhaps more than anything, separates stories as entertainment, a worthy form in and of itself, from stories as medicine. In my farthest back culture, although we bridge the modern world, there is at the root a timeless storyteller legacy, wherein one teller hands down his or her stories and the knowledge of the medicine in them to one or more las semillas, or persons. Seeds are people who have the gift from birth onward. They are the future story keeps, whom the elder has hopes for. Those who have shown a talent are recognizable. Several old ones will agree and squire them, help and protect them while they learn. The lucky ones will, with much difficulty, discomfort, and inconvenience, under a rigorous and many years long course of work that will teach them to carry on the tradition as they learned it, with all the proper preparations, blessings, percussions, essential insights, ethics, and attitudes that constitute the body of healing knowledge, according to its requirements, not theirs, according to its initiations, according to its prescribed forms. These forms and lengths of time in training cannot be shunted aside or modernized. They cannot be learned in a few weekends or a few years' time. They demand long periods of time for a reason, and that is so that the work does not become trivialized, changed, or misused, as it often does when in the wrong hands, or when used for the wrong reasons, or when appropriated with all good intention coupled with ignorance. No good can come from that. How seeds are chosen is a mysterious process that defies exact definition except for those who know it well. For it is not based on a set of rules, nor imagination, but rather on time-honored relationship, face to face, one person to another. The elder chooses the younger. One chooses another. Sometimes they find their way to us. But more often we stumble over each other, and both recognize the other as though over eons. Desire to be like this is not the same as beingness. Typically, those in family who carry this talent are called out in childhood. The elders who carry the gift have their eyes peeled, often looking for the one who is sin piel, the skinless one, the one who feels so much and so deeply, and who observes the larger patterns of life and the smaller detail as well. They are looking as I, now in my 5th decade, look for those who have come to certain acuities from having, for decades and for a lifetime, lived in careful listening. The training of curanderas, contadoras y cuentistas is very similar because of my heritage. Stories are considered to be written like un tatuaje del destino, tatuaje, maybe it's tatuaje del destino, a light tattoo on the skin of the one who has lived them. Hey, Pearl, welcome in. Welcome, everyone. It is believed that talent in healing derives from the reading of this faint writing upon the soul and the development of what is found there. Story, as one part of a 5-part healing discipline, is considered the destiny of one who carries such inscribing. Not all carry such, but those who do have their own futures written upon them. They are called las únicas, those who are one of a kind. Excuse me. So one of the first questions we ask when we meet a teller/healer is, ¿Quiénes son tus familiares? ¿Quiénes son tus padres? Who are your people? In other words, from what family line of healers do you come? This does not mean what school did you go to. This does not mean what classes did you take. What workshops have you been to? It means literally, from whose spiritual lines do you descend? As always, we look for authenticity in age, knowing rather an intellectual smartness, a religious devotion that is unshakable and embedded in daily life, the gentle courtesies and attitudes that are clearly inherent in a person who has knowledge of that source from which all healing derives. In the Contadora Cuentista tradition, there are parents and grandparents and sometimes madrinas y padrinos, godparents of the story, and these being the person who taught the story and its meanings and momentum to you, who gifted you with it, the mother or father of the story, and the person who taught it to the person who taught it to you, abuelo o abuela, grandfather or grandmother of the story. This is as it should be. Gaining explicit permission to tell another's tale and the proper crediting of that tale. If permission to it, got it. Okay, I'm there. If permission to it is given, gaining explicit permission to tell another's tale and the proper crediting of that tale, if permission to it is given, is absolutely essential, for it maintains the genealogical umbilicus. We are on one end, the life-giving placenta on the other. It is a sign of respect, and one might say, of befitting manners in one properly raised in stories, to ask and receive permission, to not take work that has not been given freely, to respect the work of others, for their work and their lives together make the work they give out. A story is not just a story. In its most innate and proper sense, it is someone's life. It is the noumen of their life and their first-hand familiarity with the stories they carry that makes the story medicine. The godparents of the tale are those who gave a blessing along with the gifting of the story. Sometimes it takes a long, long time to tell the ancestry of a story before we can begin the story proper. This listing of the mother of the story and the grandmother of the story and so on is not a long, boring preamble, but spiced with small stories in and of itself. The longer story that follows is then like a second course, like at a feast. I love it. It's cool. In every authentic story and healing tradition that I know, the relating of a story begins with the bringing up, hauling up of psychic contents, both collective and personal. The process is a long exertion in time and energy, both intellectual and spiritual. It is in no way an idle practice. It costs much and takes long. Though there are intercambiamos, cuentos, story trades, cuentos, wherein two people who have come to know each other well exchange stories as a gift to one another. This occurs because they have developed, if they are not born to it, a kinship relationship. And this is as it should be. Although some use stories as entertainment alone, and although television in particular too often uses storylines that depict the necrosis of life, tales are, in one of their oldest senses, a healing art. Some are calling to this healing art, and the best, by my lights, are those who have genuinely lain with the story and found all its matching parts inside themselves and at depth. They have had a long mentorship, a long spiritual discipleship, and a long time perfecting their disciples or disciplines. Persons such as these are immediately recognizable by their presence alone. In dealing with stories, we are handling archetypal energy, which we could metaphorically describe as being like electricity. This electrical power can animate and enlighten, but in the wrong place, wrong time, wrong amount, wrong teller, wrong story, unprepared teller, person who may know some of what to do, but does not know what not to do, like any medicine, it will not have the desired effect, or else a deleterious one. We looked that up, which I know it means negative, a bad one. Deleterious. I think that's how we say it. Sometimes people who are story collectors do not realize what they are asking when they ask for a story of this dimension, or attempt to use it without blessing. Archetype changes us. Archetype infuses a recognizable integrity, a recognizable endurance. If there is no change in the teller, there has been no fidelity. There has been no real contact with the archetype, no transmission, only rhetorical translation of self-interested aggrandizement. The handing down of a story is a large and far-reaching responsibility. To detail the parameters of such would fill several volumes, were I to attempt to describe the healing processes in their completeness, using story as a single component among many. But in the limited space here, let the most important part be conveyed, that we are charged to make certain that people are completely and fully wired for the stories they carry and tell. Among the best of the story or of the teller healers, let's try that again. Among the best of the teller healers I know, and I have been blessed to know many, their stories grow out of their lives as roots grow a tree. The stories have grown them into who they are. We can tell the difference. We know when someone has grown a story facetiously, and when the story has genuinely grown them. It is the latter that underlies the integral traditions. Sometimes a stranger asks me for one of the stories I've minded. Shit, balls. Let's try again. Sometimes a stranger asks me for one of the stories I've mined, shaped, and carried over the years. As the keeper of these stories, given to me on the basis of promises asked for and promises kept, I do not separate them from the other words and rites that surround them, especially those developed and nurtured in the roots of familia. This choice depends on no 5-point plan, but on a science of soul. Relationship and relatedness are everything. The master apprentice model provides the kind of careful atmosphere in which I have been able to help my learners seek and develop the stories that will accept them, that will shine through them, not just lay on the surface of their being like dime store jewelry. There are ways, and there are ways. There are a few easy ways, but no easy ways that I know of that also have integrity. There are also much more and far more tortuous, tortuous, tor, tortuous. Is it torturous? And difficult ways that have integrity and are worth it. Tortuous. Let's look it up. We only have like one page left. Okay, tortuous. Tortuous. Like fortuitous? Fine. Merbadoo. Tortuous definition. Full of twists and turns.
Tortuous.
Oh, tortuous. But okay, tortuous. Full of twists and turns. The root is remote and tortuous. Tortuous. Okay. I think I said it. Maybe I had it right the first time. I don't know. There are much more and far more tortuous and difficult ways that have integrity and are worth it. Absolutely. One is enabled in the healing art, in the medicine of story, by the amount of self that one is willing to sacrifice and put into it. And I mean the word sacrifice in every nuance of the word. Sacrifice is not a suffering that one chooses oneself, nor is it a convenient suffering in which the terminus is controlled by the sacrificee. Sacrifice is not a great striving or even a substantial discomfort. It is in some wise, quote, entering a hell not of one's own making, end quote, and returning from it, fully chastened, fully focused, fully devoted, no more, no less. Whew! There is a saying in my family: the gatekeeper of stories will exact their due from you, that is, force you to live a certain kind of life, a daily discipline, bend you to many years of study, not idle study as ego finds it convenient, but one built upon exacting patterns and requirements. I cannot emphasize this enough. In the family traditions of dealing with story, in the Mezamondak, as well as the Quenista traditions I learned and have used since I was a child, there is what I called la invitada, the guest, that is, the empty chair. This being present at every telling in one way or another, sometimes during a tell, the soul of one or more of the listeners comes and sits there, for it has a need. Although I may have an entire evening of material, and I carefully considered, I may change the progression to accommodate, to mend, or play with the sense of spirit that comes to the empty chair. The guest speaks for the needs of all. I tell people to do their own mining of stories from their own lives and insist upon it with those I teach, especially the stories from their own heritages. For if at least one turns, for if at the least one turns away to the tales directly from the translators of Grimm's, for instance, then the tales of their personal heritage, as soon as their old ones die off, shall be lost to them forever. I am a strong supporter of those who bring back the stories of their heritages, preserving them, saving them from death by neglect. Of course, it is the old people who are the bones of the entire healing and spiritual structures everywhere on the face of the earth. Look to your people, your life. It is not by accident that this advice is the same among great healers and great writers as well. Look to the real that you yourself live. The kinds of tales found here can never come from books. They come from eyewitness accounts. The authentic mining of stories from one's own life and the lives of one's own people and the modern world as it relates to one's own life as well means that there will be discomfort and trials. You know you're on the right path if you've experienced these: the scraped knuckles, the sleeping on cold ground, not once, but over and over again, the groping in the dark, the walking in circles in the night, the bone chilling revelations, and the hair raising adventures on the way. These are worth everything. There must be a little, and in many cases, a good deal of blood spilled on every story, on every aspect of your own life. If it is to carry Newman, if a person is to carry a true medicine, I hope you will go out and let stories, that is life, happen to you, and that you will work with these stories from your life, not someone else's life. Water them with your blood and tears and your laughter till they bloom, till they till you till you yourself burst into bloom. That is the work, the only work. Oh my gosh. So then the addendum, which is just like 3 pages or something. Oh my goodness. Addendum. In response, dot dot. In response to readers asking about various aspects of my work in life, we have expanded some sections of this work in small ways, adding several anecdotes, clarifications, and various additional notes, expanding the afterword, and publishing here a prose poem for the first time that was part of the original manuscript. All of these ministrations were done carefully and without disturbing the cadence of the work. 3 years later, dot dot dot. Many readers have written to express appreciation, to share news of their reading groups who have been studying Women Who Run with the Wolves, and to send blessings and inquiries about future books. They have read this book carefully and closely, and often more than once. In all, I have been greatly astonished to find that the spiritual roots of my work, even though quietly stated in the subtext of the book, were so evident to so many readers. My warmest gratitude for readers' blessings sent our way, their kind words, thoughtful insights, great generosities of heart, beautiful gifts made by hand, and their abundant gestures for strengthening and sheltering, such as including my work, the welfare of my family and loved ones, myself, in their everyday devotions. All these gestures are preciously held in my heart. And then this one says, a long time ago, but not so far away, dot, dot, dot. Here I will try to comment on some of the interests that readers have conveyed to us. Many have asked about how the writing of Women Who Run with the Wolves began. Quote, the writing began long before the writing began, end quote. It began by being born into the unusual and quixotic family structures that El Destino had prepared for me. It began with decades of being filled up by heartbreaking beauty and seeing much hope lost in cultural, societal, and other kinds of storms. It began as the result of loves and lives both harsh and dear. Quote, the writing began long before the writing began, end quote. This I can say with confidence. The actual physical writing by hand began in 1971 after a pilgrimage from the desert to my home place, where I asked for and received blessings from my elders to write a special body of work rooted in the song language of our spiritual roots. Promises were given by all in many directions then, and have been kept all these years, and to the letter, the most important being, quote, do not forget us, and what we have suffered for, end quote. Women Who Run with the Wolves is the first part of a 5-part series encompassing 100 tales on the inner life. The entire 2,200 pages of work took just over 20 years to write. Wow. In its essence, the work strives to depathologize the integral instinctual nature and to demonstrate its soulful and essential psychic ties to the natural world. The basic premise that runs through all my work asserts that all human beings are born gifted. On voice, ... The work was purposefully written in a blend of the scholarly voice via my training as a psychoanalyst, and equally so in the voice of the traditions of healing and hard work that reflect my ethnic origins, immigrant, lower working class, and Catholicos, all. The heritage of my growing up is the rhythm of labor, and this shapes me first and foremost as una poeta, a poet. As it represents both a psychological and spiritual document, various bookshops have placed Women Who Run with the Wolves in several sections at the same time: psychology, poetry, women's studies, and religious studies. Some have said it defies category, or has begun a new one of its own. I do not know if this is so, but at its root, I hoped it would be as much an artwork as a psychological work on spirit. A reader's note, dot, dot, dot. Women Who Run with the Wolves strives to assist the continuous, or rather the conscious work of individuation. The book is best approached as a contemplative work that is written in 20-some sections. Each section stands on its own. 99% of the letters we receive relate how the reader is reading the work not only to themselves, but also to and with a loved one. Mother to daughter, granddaughter to grandmother, lover to lover, and in weekly or monthly reading groups, or just like us. Because the work cannot be read in a week or a month's time, it lends itself to being studied. The work itself invites the personal lives of each reader to be weighed against what is proposed there, decided for or against, passed close to, deepened, returned to, and seen through an ongoing maturation process. Take your time reading. The work was written slowly over a long period of time. I wrote, went away, and thought about it, came back and wrote some more, went away, thought some more, and came back and wrote some more. Most people read this work the way it was written, a little at a time, then go away. Think about it, then come back again. Yeah, dude. And it also really followed a lot of all the phases of my life. Remember, dot, dot, dot. Psychology, in its oldest sense, means the study of the soul. Although essential and valuable insights have been contributed in the last century, and more will be contributed yet, the mapping of human nature in all its precious variety is far from complete. Psychology is not 100 or so years old. Psychology is thousands of years old. The names of many noble men and women who contributed to psychological knowledge are properly honored. But psychology did not begin there. It began with anyone and everyone who heard a voice greater than their own and who felt compelled to seek its source. Some have said that my work constitutes, quote, a newly emerging field, end quote. I must say, with all due respect, that the essence of the work I've been given to do is from very old tradition. This kind of work does not fit restfully under the category of emerging anything. Thousands of people in every generation worldwide, mostly old ones who are often uneducated but wise in many ways, have watched over and protected its exact and intricate parameters. It has always been alive and thriving because they have been alive and thriving and held the work to certain shapes and means. A caveat, dot, dot, dot. The matter of individual maturation is a custom endeavor. There can be no rote, do this, then this. The process of each individual is unique and cannot be codified into a do these 10 easy steps and then all will be well. This kind of work is not easy and is not for everyone. If you seek a healer, analyst, therapist, or counselor, make certain they derive from a discipline that has solid predecessors, that they truly know how to do what they hold themselves out as able to do. Ask friends, relatives, and coworkers whom you trust for their recommendations. Make certain whichever teacher you choose is trained, and adequately, in both methods and ethics. Life now, dot, dot, dot. Hey, Stony, just in time for the very end. I am underground, writing and working much of the time, but, quote, there are occasional sightings, end quote. I continue to live as I have lived for many years now, ardently introverted, yet fiercely dedicated to striving to be in the world. I continue to work as analyst, poet, and writer, as well as caring for my large extended family. I continue to speak on social issues, persevere to record audio, paint, compose, translate, teach, and help to train young psychoanalysts. I teach literature, writing, psychology, mythopoetics, contemplative life, and other subjects at various universities as visiting scholar. Sometimes people ask, what has been the most memorable event over the past few years? Certainly there have been many, but the one that pierced my heart completely was the happiness of the elders in our family when this work was first published. For them, the first book from one of their own in print ever. A particular image. When my 84-year-old father saw this book for the first time, he cried out in his broken English, a book, a real book. And right there, he began to dance an old Sibraki dance from the old country. The work, ... As contadora, keeper of the old stories, and as an ethnic woman from two cultures, it would be hard not to recognize that humans are very diverse culturally, psychologically, and otherwise. Such being so, it seems to me that it would be an error to think that any one way is the way. This particular work is offered as a contribution to what is known and what is needed in a true psychology of women, one that includes all the kinds of women that exist and all the kinds of lives they lead. My observations and experiences over these 20-some years of practice with both women and men have led me to the idea that regardless of one's state, stage, or station in life, one must have psychological and spiritual strength in order, in small ways, as well as against the considerable winds that are, from time to time, in effect in every person's life. Strength does not come after one climbs the ladder or the mountain, or after one makes it, or whatever it represents. Strengthening oneself is essential to the process of striving, especially before and during, as well as after. It is my belief that attention to the devotion to the nature of soul represents the quintessential strength. There is much afoot at any given time that can make a shambles of spirit and soul by attempting to destroy intent, or by pressuring one to forget the important questions such as not only what are the pragmatics of a situation, but also where is the soul in this matter. One proceeds in life, gains ground, reverses injustice, and stands against the winds through strength of spirit. This strengthening, whether with words, prayer, contemplation of various kinds, or by other means, comes from a noumen, a greatness that rests at the center of the psyche, and yet is greater than the whole of the psyche. This noumen is entirely accessible, must be attended to, and nourished. Its existence, regardless of its many appellations, is an incontrovertible psychic fact. Difficult and rich, this is what a person in an authentic maturation finds at the essence of it all. And it shows, both inside and outside, on the person who strives toward it. This we know. There is a noticeable difference between a considered life of depth and one based on phantasmagoric beliefs. On this journey toward true home, though we may, from time to time, turn back to record or measure from whence we came, we do not turn back in order to turn back. The end. Wow. These are chapter notes, and I'm just going to leave them right here. Dang, everyone. Wow. Boom. We did it with the wolves. So thank you. I feel so thankful. Man, lady, woman, all. Excuse me. So yeah, conscientious angel, welcome. Yeah, I love yous, and I thank you. And dang, I'll see you live for another book soon. And until then, take care of yourselves. Mwah.